Very honored Frater BT's Esoterinerd podcast, episode 21. In this episode, we will interview my old friend David Crawford. But first, one brief item from our corrections department. In episode 18, Twin Peaks Tarot, I introduced the new segment, Transformations and Footnotes. I stated that I would be reciting my father's book, Transformations, while we listened to Pat Metheny's Ricochet Parts 1 and 2. It turns out they're not Pat Metheny, they are Tangerine Dream Ricochet Parts 1 and 2. Which dovetails nicely into Part 2 of our ongoing segment, Transformations and Footnotes, in which I read my father's magnum opus, verse by verse. He has it divided into chapters and verses. If you haven't heard Chapter 1, Verse 1, then please cover your ears with your fingers until it's finished. Unless, of course, you're driving. To hear Chapter 1, Verse 1, dial it back to Episode 18, Twin Peaks Tarot. This is Transformations, Chapter 2, Verse 2. Coming back to the flesh place is like walking through a roar of devouring electric teeth, wind tunneling, egg-beatering, vortexing, and the stars whirl down, and the yellow light and white light make whirligig rainbows that turn gray and cloudy, even almost smoky, in night-bed darkness. And my flesh place, the body, is below me. I take its shape. I become its shape. I pretend dreams and create plots and people them with problems and confusions, intrusions, conflicts, resolutions. It all becomes very intense and totally significant beyond words as I experience it and wake up at 5:30 in the a.m. to some talk show on the radio, exchanging make-wrongs and playing Ain't It Awful, and blaming Nixon, Ford, Uncle Ho, Mao, Castro, religion, no religion, with no viable solution or taking of responsibility evident. And now for the footnotes. Now, I'm assuming that you already heard Chapter 1, Verse 1. If none of this makes sense, you got to hear that one first, because this is actually a continuation of a thought that began in that one. So, he was in the white light communing with the people that the commoners call gods and devils and stuff, but he calls them friends. Now he's coming back. He's waking up in the morning is what's happening. Now, a little personal anecdote. God forbid, if I had to go to the bathroom before he woke up, the bathroom was in his room. I had to walk on a creaky floor past him to get to the bathroom. And every single time, no matter how tiptoey, sometimes once in a while I'd make it to the bathroom, and then on my way back, I'd wake him up, and he would wake up screaming, "Ah! Ah! Ah! Ah!" Which apparently he was flashing back to being born in World War II in Shanghai with Japanese bombs going off outside and stuff like that, according to him after some regression therapy. Incidentally, when he met and fell in love with his third wife, Sue, that stopped happening. Kind of a big deal. Sadly, they were only together for 3 years before he passed away. I'd become its shape. Yeah. It's nice to think that, just a few seconds before we wake up in the morning, we're not male or female or human or cat or... I pretend dreams and create plots and people them with problems, confusions, intrusions, conflict resolutions. I love this because time really, it speeds up and slows down and at the same time in REM, because in 8 seconds you can have like a several hour long experience go by. And yeah, like you said, you create all these plots and people them, it becomes totally significant. And then somehow that has to do with what's going on in your waking life. And it's some kind of, unconscious subliminal kind of working it all out or replaying it or kind of like processing those emotions and the hypothalamus and playing with the imagery and kind of maybe a little bit of free associating or astral work, I don't know. I mean, I always thought that there was a blurry line between dreaming and astral work, that at a certain point, maybe what they would call in Scientology clear, when you're clear, your dreams are astral projection, and when you still have engrams and all this stuff going on and re-stimulating in your own brain, then you end up having these, recurring dreams where you're working stuff out and that kind of thing. Of course, rationally, there's no reason to believe that there's anything outside of our extended nervous system. I mean, maybe the dreams are going on in our toe, because our nervous system is directly connected to the brain matrix. So, I could buy that, but it takes a little bit of a leap, quantum leap, if you will, to kind of grok thinking in another person's toe or brain. But that's probably a good thing. We all have our privacy. We all have our brain privacy, and we can choose to share through communication or not. Exchanging make-wrongs. Now, he actually dedicated this book to the founder of EST, Earhart Seminars Training, Werner Earhart. That's an Earhartism, an Estism, which translates into our modern terms as a landmark forumism. So if you or a friend are familiar with the landmark forum and you read Transformations, you will be thinking in their terminology by the end of it. So that's where make-wrongs comes in. It might have its roots in Scientology, I'm not sure. And playing Ain't It Awful with hyphens and in quotes, that's a reference to Eric Burns' Games People Play, and that's Berne. Check it out. That's a really good book. And blaming Nixon, Ford, Uncle Ho, that's just kind of nice because then it reminds you he's writing in 1976 and you're kind of in a time portal while you're reading it. Uncle Ho, honestly, I have no idea what that even is a reference to. Mao, I know. Castro, religion, no religion. With no viable solution or taking of responsibility evident. Yeah, a lot of complaining, a lot of blaming, but no one saying, hey, we got to take responsibility for this. At least it wasn't evident on broadcast radio in 1976. Our guest tonight is my old friend David Crawford. When David heard that line that I just read, chapter 1, verse 2, his response was, "Boy, your dad sure didn't like coming back into the flesh place, did he?" Only with a Scottish accent, of course. If you've seen the tarot-themed art walk video that I created on YouTube under the pseudonym Gwydion, or if you've found the Easter egg on the Esoterinerd website, then you will already know David Crawford as the Hermit in the Hermit card, alongside Delphia's wonderful representation of that card. And he was also the one being healed or let out of his grave prison in the video called Healing Work. When Honored Sower FSM and I were married, our bridesmaids and our groomsmen each wore a different color of the rainbow. David Crawford was my orange groomsman. And so without further ado, let's get to that interview, shall we? Greetings, Frater. Welcome to the Esoterinerd podcast.
Thank you. Well, it's been a bit of an honor, actually. I was more surprised to get your call.
Well, I like to mix it up, between people that I know personally, people who are just on their path, who have never taken on the role of teacher, but who I think have something valuable to offer. People who've been students long enough that, if someone says, hey, how do you do this? You say, well, actually, I have a lot of experience with that. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from. I mean, I'm glad to have Poke Runyon on there, but I mean, in a way, he's a friend of my dad's, so I'm still just basically inviting my friends on. I had an author come on, but other than that, I mean, Season's been on and a few other people.
I listened to a few. I didn't manage to hear the Runyon one. Something went wrong when I tried to make the connect. I'll catch it later.
Yeah. So, okay, could you describe the first time that you met me?
Oh, I'll never forget the first time I met you. I had no idea who on earth it was that I was going to be confronting. I was with Lana. Lana and I had just moved to Los Angeles, and she was already a part of the order, and she wanted to go to your sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
So I was actually imagining somebody more like your dad. I think I was expecting an older person, somebody who might be sitting smoking a pipe or something like that. But she was, but not one of the pipe I thought he would be smoking. And anyway, I turned the corner at the Henniger house, and there was this young lad with this massive blonde hair, half clothed, lying on the porch in the back. And I thought,
was I lying? I thought I was at least sitting.
Anyway, you made me most welcome, and it went from there.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, I just handed you the pipe, right?
Something like that. Yeah, it was the very last
before hello. Yeah, good times. So now, before that, I'm interested because I know the Essenes as a historical thing, as like Qumran and all that, where Jesus and his dad were transcribing the Old Testament and all that, and putting it in jars for people to find later in a cave or something. And so I'm not. What I know of that is that they were living a high priest Levitical lifestyle, or they were abiding by the rules of Leviticus, the rules for the high priest, which I believe includes ultimate celibacy, even with your own wife, if I recall correctly. So that's where that's my level of ignorance with the Essenes. Now, Silence the Aquarian is a neighbor of mine, and he mentioned being drawn to the Essenes, but I think he's also tapping into the historical ones. So I'm interested in what it was that you were practicing in the 90s.
Okay, well, I came into the Essenes kind of like halfway through my sojourn, my search on my spiritual path, if you like, to find out who I am, what I am.
Mm-hmm. And
it was the first time I had been confronted with the discipline of ritual, wherein you're given they're like affirmations, they're prayers to the angels, the recognition of Mother Earth, they're an awareness of being in connect.
Right.
With the earth beneath you, the sky above you, the other dimensions that exist within our beingness, if you like. And after a short period of time of playing with these rituals, there was like 4 a day. You worship or you give respect to the angel of the morning, angel of noontime, the angel of the evening, and the angel of night. You are paying a homage to the elements in various different degrees and one thing and another. And that was basically what I started doing. I just started playing with it to see how it was going to affect my thinking or my way of life. And there was also study involved, and it was the first time I had come across the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I had gone into the Tibetan Book of the Dead earlier in my search, but this was the first time I was confronted with the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And they do a lot of deep study on that aspect of the teachings,
now,
which is basically where the Golden Dawn is too.
Is the Essenes that? I mean, by they, is it an organization? Is it a church? I mean, I haven't.
I joined online a group that was known as the Order of the Nazarene Essenes.
Okay.
And I was given someone who would supervise my studies, who would send me study material. I had to reply to him, and it was all done online. It was all done like at a distance. I never got the chance to visit an ashram or anything like that, and I kind of wished I had, but circumstances just never allowed for that. So.
Yeah.
But they have a very strict monasterial way of living, which I think was I actually kind of balked a bit at it. The idea of cold water washes in the morning and things like that didn't ever really appeal to me. I don't mind. There was a lot of fasting. I was taught to fast, which was a very powerful experience. That really does get you to know who you are when you are really, really, really hungry. Yeah. And the only thing you can communicate with is this noise in your stomach saying, feed me, feed me, feed me. And you're saying, no, no, no. And it can go on for like 4 days, and that's a struggle. But it does bring you back to, what you're really all about.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So that was my appeal with the Essenes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I got a virus on a hard drive that I was working with, and all my notes got wiped out. At least they're not wiped out. I daren't open that hard drive again because it's a virus that can jump to the next computer.
That makes sense. So prior to that, you were studying Theosophy?
Theosophy was my... I left in 1986. I had a brain fart. I was working for the railways in Scotland. I was the operations manager for the West Highland Railway. It was a grand title, but it was a great job. I spent a lot of time just in the mountains in Scotland. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And I got promoted to a managerial position, and at the same time, Margaret Thatcher was bringing in the privatization to the extent of destroying unions and all that kind of stuff that existed over there. And I was going to have a hard time because they were bringing in people with geography degrees to be my supervisors. They knew nothing about how a railway worked, and they were going to cause serious problems. In fact, there were accidents took place on the railway after the years after I left that should never have happened. But I had this brain fart and decided that I was going to turn my back on the system, so to speak. So I dumped everything and went to Greece. I lived on Samos, where I was on the island of Pythagoras, and that got me interested in Pythagorean teachings. So I read some of the works that are attributed to him, and I don't really remember too much about them. But I did get the sensation of there's a perfection in mathematics involved here. Numbers are important.
Yeah.
Patterns are important. That kind of idea. And then I left that and we moved to France. And I was in the Alps for a while, and that was where I joined the Theosophical Society.
Okay.
And basically, what you do in the Theosophical Society is you do 2 years of training in the outside order, and then you have the opportunity of going into the esoteric order. And the esoteric order is a 7-year course. Mm-hmm. It's basically just personal alchemy. It's no different to any of the other Western mystical teachings. It's personal alchemy, how to balance all your elements in one thing or another.
Right.
And become a good, considerate, caring, kind, loving person. Because that should be the ultimate aim of the human being. I've always believed that.
Yeah.
I did the 7 years. I was offered the position of, I'm pausing because I'm trying to remember this whole title. It's a great big long title. I was secretary to the chairman of the European Federation of the Theosophical Society, who was a Vietnamese woman called Tran Thai Kim Ju, my first real mentor in the mystical teaching, somebody that I could really personally relate to. That was one of the things that really opened my mind with when I was doing Theosophy, was when you start to compare. It wasn't the initial instruction in Theosophy is not to study any one religion. It is to compare all of the religions until you find something that makes sense. And that was basically what the appeal was with regards to my studies of Theosophy. It was this idea of always having this ability to compare, put yourself in the other guy's shoes, see what it would be like from his point of view, feel what it's like from his point of view, and in that way come up with a solution.
Yeah.
The similarities of the vast majority of the teachings, all the way back to as far back as we can go, the Sumerians and beyond, if you like. It's all been about the same thing. Nothing has changed. It's been messed around with. It's been messed around with quite a considerable amount, to the point that we don't even know what it is we're living on, far less living in.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like if you're looking through a lens of a telescope, if you focus it one way, then it reveals kind of history and art. But if you focus another way, then you can see mysticism, and then you find the similarities. It's like the similarities and the differences. The differences are, the cultural things. Like, oh, well, that's your culture. In my culture, we do it differently. But then, when you get it to the real heart of it, you find an overlap, for instance, between East and West in the Japanese void, the Chinese Tao, and then you have Ein. You have the veils of negative existence in Kabbalah, and concepts like these, and I think there's probably something that translates into sort of a Greek mystic Christian paradigm, but the word is eluding me right now. But then from there, it's like once you can find, like in our system, it'd be, or in the Golden Dawn system, it'd be the white dot at the center of the rose, at the center of the rose, at the center of the Laman. So that dot would, once in a conversation with someone who's supposedly from some other culture, you can find that white dot together, or in some cases it's a black dot, because in you know what I mean. The guy in South Africa on episode 5, his name's Kay, and his whole thing, he's borrowing heavily from Golden Dawn, Gnosticism, and Buddhism, but it's all focused on this idea of the black sun. And but then when I got into it with him, it turned out that was pretty much what I thought it was going to end up being, which was this idea of everything revolving around the void of Ein. And he's using the word ku because it's in his own language. It's in the Bantu language, which is local to South Africa, so that he can develop a very sophisticated modern day mystery school based on his own local voodoo. I was like, hell yeah, that's so good.
One of the things I never really got the opportunity to get around to studying was African cultures. I was always fascinated by Africa. And I don't believe a word of what we've been told in our history books about what Africa is. If you look at some of the photographs of African cities, they are very modern, well-developed cities. I mean, and yet everybody seems to think that Africa is this place where people are running around.
It's because of the Carthaginian Roman, battle. It's just we've inherited the Roman Empire, and we've inherited all the crap talking they did about the Carthaginians, and that's really basically all it comes down to. I mean, they had steelmaking. They had 19th century steelmaking technology in Carthage. Then they just went over and burned everything and salted it and didn't even bother to look at what they were doing and adopt it into their own empire. It was silly.
Yeah. Well, mankind certainly has made a mess of some stuff.
Yeah. Well, we've inherited what we've inherited, and it's interesting when we can let go of the barrier between human and animal, or human and the rest of life, which is something important we need to do in order to find our balance. Of course.
That was actually one of the things I learned very, very early on, and I've been vegetarian for most of my life now, because I've been vegetarian for 40 years, and I was a meat eater for 20. So
for me, on September 29th was the first day that I substituted.
I saw that. I was following it on Facebook. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. I finally did it. I've been wanting to do it.
Be honest with me. Do you feel a difference?
I feel great. I mean, I did it wrong last year when I tried it, and I felt terrible because I was just eating bread or something. I don't know what I was doing. I was doing vegetarian and not vegan. So I was eating cheese and egg and thinking that was going to make up for all the beef I wasn't eating. I wasn't even really.
Cheese is one of the hardest to give up.
Yeah.
Cheese definitely was. It was my downfall as well.
Yeah.
But you've got to get off dairy products as well, because they're of no use to the human being at this time.
Right. I mean, this is probably stuff you and I both know, but just to kind of give people an idea where we're coming from, in yoga, for instance, in Raja Yoga, the first yama, or the first observance you're supposed to abide by, is nonviolence. And pretty much any, yogi, as in Indian man with a long beard who practices yoga, if you ask him, is it okay to eat meat? He'll say no, because ahimsa is the first rule in yoga. That's nonviolence, and you can't get meat off an animal. You could say, well, what if I waited for it to die? But that's just not healthy, so you don't eat meat. That's what it is. And so since I decided to become a yogi, to kind of like say, okay, Esoterinerd's been fun, but now it's time to get serious and become a yogi. That's kind of where I'm coming from. Part of that is really getting down to it, doing yoga, practicing the asanas, practicing the pranayama, focusing on that, kind of making that the main focus.
Only problem I would say with going vegan is you've got to start paying attention to what you do eat.
Right.
Because you have to supply your body with certain things for it to work. And it's a case of you've got to do some research. But it's the case of that is what's wrong with people today. They won't research anything.
All the information is available at their fingertips, and they're all watching porn.
Yeah. Somebody makes a statement, and they either believe it or they disbelieve it. They don't research it.
Yeah, repost the meaning.
And this is why we're living in such chaos. Because people are not taking the time to think of well, if I do this, is that not going to cause that anguish, hurt, pain, or whatever? But I was in my 20s, I think. I think I just turned 20, and I was passing a slaughterhouse on the train one day, and we got stopped at a signal. And it was right next to the field where the cows waited to go into this building to be slaughtered. And I noticed that it was a beautiful green field. There was lovely lush grass on this field. And in the corner, right up next to where the railway tracks were, was this horrible, ugly mud patch where all the cows had gathered. And I thought, what on earth are they doing in that horrible mud patch and not enjoying that lovely nice grass? And then I heard the squeal of a pig from the slaughterhouse. And I thought, oh shit, these cows know what's going to happen to them. And at that moment, I stopped eating meat.
Yeah.
It's everything has a right to live on this earth. It's not just human beings. We don't have the right to destroy, to kill, to hurt. That's not what we came for. That's reptilian programming.
I don't even like putting my cat in a box to take her to the dentist.
Uh-oh.
I feel like she should, but.
Another thing I started doing recently was taking additional vitamins and omega-3s and things like that.
Oh, good. Algae-based?
Because the food that you do eat, or we can eat, is so deficient in nutrition that you've got to back up with something.
Well, let me tell you what I do every morning. So every morning, almost every morning, I get up and I do my 5 Tibetans.
Right.
And you and I both know what that is. For everyone else, Google is your friend. The 5 Tibetans.
Okay.
And it's a yoga thing. You spin around. Anyway, then after that, I do some kriyas, and then I have some water, because there are kriyas that you aren't supposed to have water before you do for the core. And anyway, after that, I come in here and I make my smoothie, which is 1 avocado, 1 banana, some strawberries, some blueberries, some mango chunks.
Lovely.
And what do we got here? This is alkalizer and detoxifier raw organic superfood, green superfood, and then organic hemp protein powder from Trader Joe's.
Very good. Yes, hemp seeds are very good for you.
I like to throw in a little extra turmeric, but it's already in the alkalizer, and you don't want to overdo the copper.
You cannot go wrong. You cannot go wrong with turmeric. It's a powerful medicine that we should have in our system.
Good for the brain. Good for fighting cancer.
Good for your blood and all kinds of stuff.
It's in curry powder, which is one of the reasons curry is so good for you.
I just had a curry this week. Yes.
Excellent. Vitamin D, B complex. Now, whenever I research tryptamines and how they interact with the brain and what's the word, endogenously produced DMT produced inside the brain, it all requires B6. And so it's good to, if you're just taking B12, you might not have enough B6 for a proper psychedelic religious experience. If you're doing Kundalini work, you want your B6. Artichoke extract, I take 1,200 milligrams in the morning because of a theory that I heard that I like, and it's not verified, which is that it acts as Viagra for the brain. What it does is it inhibits and I might have this, I'm no doctor, so I'll just tell the dumb guy version. It inhibits the enzyme that gobbles up all the CAMP, which is the stuff in the brain. That means you're interested in something. And there's a similar enzyme that does it in a different region of the body, and so that's where Viagra comes in. But artichoke will do it on the one for the brain, so you can actually become and remain interested in things you're not actually interested in, much like Viagra.
Oh, dear.
I'm sorry, Grandma. And she's like, oh, cover yourself. Anyway, and then, of course, the vegan omega-3s and the vitamin C reishi. We got a reishi mushroom happening.
Oh, good. Yes.
Jamie takes this organic spirulina, but I put it in the smoothie. She's got to run off to school first thing in the morning, so she doesn't have time for a smoothie anymore. Oh, and oil of oregano. It does all kinds of wonderful things. One of the things it does is it blocks it inhibits the reuptake and the degradation of the three main neurotransmitters that we use for thinking. So, in other words, you don't use it up. Like the dopamine, the non-adrenaline, and the serotonin last longer. So you're still thinking when you're like going to sleep at night.
We use oil of oregano to kill viruses.
Oh, I'm sure that's good too. So it's good for immune system. It's an immune system.
But you're burping pizza all the time when you take that stuff.
Oh yeah, that's true. I don't mind it though. And so yeah, between that smoothie and those pills, it pretty much gives me a good start. And then the rest of the day, I munch on walnuts and broccoli and carrots and what else?
Do you eat honey?
Indian food.
Do you eat honey?
No, I don't.
You don't? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's two schools of thought on that, but I mean, I still kind of feel like if it's not like on the level of dairy where it's like it is like their amniotic fluid. It's what they use to house and feed their young, and they put so much work into it that, you know, I mean, even though it's really they just sort of process it and barf it back up, it's really it seems like rude to take it. I don't know. So, I mean, that's just me.
I think you're probably quite right on that one.
And it seems like it's just too yummy. You know what I mean? It's like it's too easy to just walk up and grab this stuff that's far too yummy, and and they were going to do something with it, and so it just seems like the karma there is a little iffy.
Okay. Yeah, I would accept that. One thing Lana did find just very recently is a woman, I think she's in Los Angeles actually, who makes a cheese from nuts, a variety of different nuts.
Oh, that's interesting.
And you just, I can't remember, it was Mayoki's Kitchen or something like that it's called. And you go online and you pick your cheese and you order it. I think you have to order it before a Wednesday or something like that because she ships it out on the Thursday and the Friday. So it's not, because it's in like packaging which has got like frozen blocks. I mean, they're melted by the time they get here, but it's obviously to keep it fresh. But it's only ever 2 days in the mail, and it arrives at your house. And this stuff's it's really good. Nice. Smoked cheeses from Europe and cream cheeses and all kinds of different things that you can. So you don't actually lose you can still satisfy that craving for that cheesy taste.
At this point, David and I had an argument about whether the world was round or flat. I was on the side that the world is round. The conversation didn't end well, and, later I decided to call him up and see if we could continue on a different subject.
Oh, my. Oh, no.
And then I sent a text that said, sorry, that voicemail was meant for a different person.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, yeah, I've got a funny story about you as well. We're doing something similar. When we were in Ontario, there was one night you were giving a lecture. Remember how everybody used to come over to our apartment at the end of the ritual or something like that? Well, there was one night you were holding forth on something to do with the Kabbalah. I can't remember exactly now what the details were, but the sliding glass doors were open, and you were kind of like standing on the balcony, but talking back into the room. And you had all these little gangbangers down below were listening to you. They had no idea what you were talking about. But we overheard one of them the next day say, I think it's okay as long as you don't look them in the eyes.
Was it the neighbors downstairs?
The neighbors downstairs and the kids in the courtyard, they all heard you giving this lecture about the Kabbalah. And of course they were blown away. Because they had never conceived of any of this kind of stuff. And it all sounded sort of like magical hokey-pokey to them. So they
That's funny.
Jules, they got all kinds of pieces.
It was something about being able to release it from just your pineal gland without any external substance. Something.
Well, it's feasible to do, but you've got to be capable of shutting down the pituitary completely. Effectively, it's like getting to the still point again. Yes, it's capable. The pineal gland is what produces the DMT, but it does so once the adrenaline has stopped. And the pituitary gland is always, that's why you've got all these thousands of thoughts going on all the time. That's your pituitary is doing that.
Okay, here's a thought. The neocortex overrides the hypothalamus and the amygdala when need be. Well, the amygdala is pretty tough. I mean, they can get right to the body and you're running down the street before you even have a chance to think about what's going on sometimes. But
yes.
In extreme situations. But normally the neocortex overrides all that. Well, I heard recently they had these musicians, jazz musicians, get in an MRI scanner, and repeatedly, when they would get into the groove, and they were all playing jazz together, their brain was lighting up like a symphony, and the neocortex had shut down and gone dark. And so what they concluded was that it was the ability to consciously stop overriding your own self, your own brain. So it's like when people are looking at the scrying mirror and they're saying, I see nothing. It's like their neocortex, or their rational mind, if you will, the one that we have uniquely human, the cats have, but much smaller and all that, is overriding those more base natural impulses. And so what I'm coming around to is perhaps there is a connection between the pituitary, the master gland, and the neocortex, whereas the pineal is a little lower down, closer to the emotions, closer to the hypothalamus. And so if you're working with the body and you're working with energy flows and you're working with emotions and you're shutting off the neocortex, which is where it actually becomes useful to like let go of reason, not in the sense of letting go of reason, but letting go of the chattering monkey for a minute. And then you can actually actively, consciously release the DMT from the pineal and not have the pituitary override it. Does that sound right? I mean, I'm not a.
Yes, that would make sense, but it would take a lot of effort to get to that point. I would.
Yeah, continuous effort.
Then you've got that problem of dosage. Would you be able to release sufficient to trigger the effect?
Maybe not the full trip. Maybe not the same as inhaling 80 milligrams or whatever and holding it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that someone who's done ayahuasca or smoked DMT might have actually had a more profound experience than the one that people normally get when they die.
That is possible. That was something that cropped up, and I remember when I was listening to one of the The guy who did the lectures back in the 90s.
Was it like Terence McKenna or?
Terence McKenna, that's who it was.
Yeah.
That's that thing.
He's talking about the real religious experience, how he went into every church and he went to every mosque and he went to, did Buddhism, and then finally in a darkened room he took some particular amount of psilocybin. And
I think this is also another important aspect. The pineal gland responds to a different kind of light from the light that we see from the sun and in our daytime vision. The pineal requires that light that's inside of you to do the illumination.
Really?
That's one of the things that keeps cropping up in the stuff that I'm
interesting. In the form of a lot of synaptic activity?
Yes, the synapses, the different patterns that you're creating within the total brain is more important than what the actual content of any one given thought is.
Okay, so breath work. It sounds like breath work to me, and
it's all based in breath work. Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's prana. It's dealing with that other energy that exists that most people in today's consciousness ignore.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you for joining us on the Esoterinerd podcast.
Okay, thank you, Edward. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
Okay, you too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, David, for joining us on the Esoterinerd podcast tonight. Special thanks to Tangerine Dream. I wanted to share with you guys, Esoterinerds out there, today is a bit of an historic occasion. It is the 19th of October, and just yesterday, or possibly tomorrow, I'm not sure because of the international dateline, in Shanghai, China, Lon Milo Duquette had a room full of people from Shanghai, Chinese people, doing a lesser banishing ritual of a pentagram today. So, well done, Lon Milo Duquette. And I spoke to one of the women who attended the workshop, China Magic, I believe it was called. Some kind of loophole, some tricky way of bringing in a new form of ceremonial magic into a land that despises such things. So good, so thelemic, so subversive. I mentioned to her that I had seen him on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood a couple weeks ago. She said he played his guitar and played one of his songs. I asked her which one, and she said, Outside the Box.
I told my mom when I was 10, the Bible is a crock. She marched me to the preacher man, boys thinking outside the box. Now look here, boy, the preacher said, just stop your crazy talk. 'Cause sticks and stones will break your bones if you think outside the box. You fight and fail, you land in jail, the world will clean your clock. You'll spend eternity in hell if you think outside the box. Don't you worry how things are or should be. Thou shalt not be unorthodox. Go to school and go to war if need be. Just don't think outside the box. In 65, some soldier guys came to my school to talk. They looked real cool, had shiny shoes, and they pumped up all the jocks. They pointed to their uniforms and walked that soldier walk. If you got balls, duty calls, just step inside the box. The draft board sent me notices I found in my mailbox, but they never reached my residence 'cause I moved outside the box. Don't you worry how things are or could be. Thou shalt not be unorthodox. Get a job, then go to war if need be. Just don't think outside the box. I'm 65, I'm still alive, and I've been around the block. Had ups and downs, and laughs and frowns, and mysteries I've unlocked. And when I am dead, let it be said upon that marble block, don't look for long down in the ground, the boy's outside the box. Keep on dreaming how things can and should be. Just proudly be unorthodox. Keep on marching to that different drummer. Live and love outside the box. Just live outside the box.